The championship window is an extremely scary thing for a sports fan, especially an NFL fan. Because after all, the NFL does stand for not for long, and it's for a reason. So anytime that an NFL fan has their team go deep into the playoffs and not capitalize on that opportunity, they're going to be scared, frightened, horrified at the thought that their team might never get back. Their team might never win it. And right now, San Francisco 49er fans across the world are scared because they're staring down the championship window. And they're scared they're never going to win the Super Bowl with this group of 49er players, with this coach. But what if I told you that the 49ers are going to be better in 2024 than they were in 2023? And that is a bold statement, because last time I checked, this team lost the Super Bowl in overtime. So there's only one way you can get better. But as I sit here, not even a week removed from the Super Bowl, not even a week removed from seeing the Chiefs beat the 49ers for the second time in the past 5 years, I'm here to tell 49er fans that the 49ers will be back and they will be better than ever in 2024, 2025. Welcome to the Bottom Line View. My name is Mitch. And in this video, I want to give you my reasoning for why the Niners will be better next season and what they have to do to improve this offseason. This is a full look at the offseason for the 49ers. This is a look at where they need to improve. And then within that, why I believe it's very possible they could actually improve. So let's talk about it. How could they be better in 2024, you may ask? I think the first thing you need to point out is the fact that one side of the football was coached incorrectly, poorly, not exactly at the peak that it's been coached at and what the expectation has been since 2019 in San Francisco. This 49er defense in 2023 was the worst 49er defense we have seen since they have become a championship caliber contender. This was the best offense the 49ers have ever had under Kyle Shanahan this past season, but this was also the worst defense that the 49ers have ever had since 2019, the season they became a contender, the first year they went to the Super Bowl. And the reason for that, in my opinion, mostly is due to coaching. It's due to a change at the defensive play caller, defensive coordinator position. There wasn't a lot different in terms of personnel from 2022, from 2021, from 2020, from 2019. There's a lot of carryover within the type of players, within the specific players, and there were plenty of Pro Bowlers, All Pros, and great players and great talents on the defense to make this an upper echelon unit. But the fact of the matter is that this defense was worse. Whether you look at EPA, whether you look at points per game, whether you look at rushing defense, which was the biggest drop-off of them all, or you just watch with your own two eyes for more than just the Super Bowl, you would have recognized that the 49ers defense had fallen off, was not the same unit. And going into the Super Bowl, I myself said that the biggest fear, as somebody that backed the 49ers and picked the 49ers and picked them before the season and picked them before the playoffs and picked them before the Super Bowl to win the damn thing, my biggest fear was that Steve Wilks would not come with a good, strong game plan in all of those games. So for me to be saying that, what does that truly mean? Somebody that's watching the NFL and the 49ers from afar and is not in that building. What are those players saying? What are those players fearing? What are those coaches saying? Think about that for a second. There is a real opportunity that the 49ers could improve at defensive coordinator this offseason. And not only defensive coordinator, but defensive personnel, period. Defensive coordinator-wise, we have learned that Steve Wilks was fired yesterday. And I've already discussed why I believe that Bill Belichick would be the proper hire and the must hire for the 49ers. He's the greatest defensive coach of all time. If he's willing to do it, you have to make it happen. If Bill Belichick does not want to be a coordinator for whatever reason, maybe his ego is too big, I understand. There are other names out there that I think would be an improvement over Steve Wilks, and most importantly, bring a change to the defensive philosophy of the 49ers to put them over the top, because I personally sit here and say they need a change. They can't just look to stay the same, look to elevate from within. I believe that the first and most important thing Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch can do for this organization, this franchise, this team for 2024 is to actually look to evolve. And there are names out there that are well respected. Mike Vrabel being one of them. Did not get a head coaching job. Don't understand why. He's been one of the best head coaches in the NFL, at least in your top 10 for the past 5 years. He was my top 5 last year. For some reason was fired. Politics, probably. But he is a defensive guy at heart. He was a linebacker of my 3-time Super Bowl champs back in the early 2000s. He is an extremely smart player and coach. And he could also help aid Kyle Shanahan in a department that we've always criticized him for, game management. Vrabel's arguably the best game manager in the entire NFL as a head coach. He really is. So if Kyle could learn something about game management from Mike Vrabel, that would be great. But he'd also bring a new flair to a defense and demand instant respect as a former player, a big personality, and just an overall great thinker of the game. There's more charismatic options like Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan is now 61 years old, but once upon a time, I did not respect any defense more than I respected Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan is an aggressive defensive coordinator. He's going to take it to the offense. He's going to blitz. He's going to come with creative ways to get to the quarterback. He is going to cause mistakes. He is going to stop the run. He's going to play aggressive. Those are all things that are in Rex Ryan's identity and DNA. And once upon a time, as a head coach of the Jets, he brought Mark Sanchez to the AFC Championship in back-to-back seasons. The man was an extremely underrated coach because his personality didn't allow people to see through how smart he was. Now, how has he evolved from a coaching perspective? He's been in media for years. It's been a long time. How would it look nowadays? That's a great question. He'd obviously have to sit down with Kyle, sit down with Lynch, and they'd have to see if that was the right fit. Maybe the personalities don't match. I'm not sure. But Rex Ryan is an intriguing option. You go down the list, a guy like Wink Martindale kind of falls in the same category as Rex Ryan from a schematical perspective, except he has more recent experience. So if you want someone a little bit less than Rex Ryan from a personality or a high-profile standpoint, but a similar philosophy, you might go with a Wink Martindale. If you want a big personality, maybe more of a motivator type, high-energy type, well, Pete Carroll's out there, and Pete Carroll has ran your defensive scheme back in his Seattle days. He is kind of the one that brought that to the NFL. So if you want to stay within that scheme, Pete Carroll is older, but it would be intriguing to see what he could do as just a defensive coordinator. He's also been the defensive coordinator of the 49ers in the past, in the 90s. Brandon Staley is an extremely smart coach, but I do think this would be the most pressure-filled hire of anyone because people hate Brandon Staley flat out because he was so bad as a head coach, and that's understandable. But as a coordinator, he was very good with the Rams, so I wonder if removing him from the head coach position would actually be a good move. And he does run something similar to the 49ers system, maybe a little bit more similar than a Bill Belichick or a Mike Vrabel or potentially a Rex Ryan. but a little bit different, a little bit more flavor than the classic San Francisco defense. Whoever they decide to go with at defensive coordinator, I think it personally will be an improvement because this is a high-profile job. This is a Super Bowl team, and they are going to get a great coach. People want to coach this defense. People want to coach Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. People want to be a part of this organization. And I think the biggest thing that hurt the 49ers this year was the fact that they've lost so many coaches over the last few years. The brain drain of the 49er organization. This year, they haven't gone through quite that process. So maybe there's a chance for them to become a stronger coaching staff and not everything to fall on the head guy, Kyle Shanahan, because not many head coaches can really sustain success without some help around them. And Steve Wilkes is a solid football coach, but certainly did not mesh with the 49ers no matter what you tell me about their Super Bowl performance. You watch this team throughout the year. You listen to the criticism he took from players. You listen to the relationship he had with Kyle Shanahan in terms of on game day, the trust that wasn't there. Kyle will bring in someone he trusts for those situations and not have to dabble so much into the defensive game plan. So defensive coordinator is the biggest thing that they need to solve. That will make a lot of players better. That will improve a unit that played at a regression level in 2023, that regressed heavily. So just getting back to top 5 defense would do wonders for this team and make them probably the most balanced team in the NFL because they were not a top 5 defense by the end of the year. They got lit up by the Lions. They got lit up by the Packers. They got lit up by the Ravens. They got lit up in the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter and overtime. So becoming a top 5 defense again would change things drastically for this team, and I could really see it. In terms of Kyle Shanahan, there's a lot of people that are really critical of him. And I have argued in years past that he's the best coach in the NFL. And I would stand by that he is at least the second best coach in the NFL. I think you might give the nod to Andy Reid simply based on the trophies at this point. But when it comes to Kyle Shanahan, there's nobody that elevates offensive talent and quarterbacks more than this guy. There's nobody that's been more productive in that regard. And I believe that Kyle Shanahan is a special coach. And I believe when you have a special individual in your facility who can lead a team, lead a franchise, lead an offense, lead a quarterback, you're going to sustain success. I don't worry about the 49ers like I worry about other teams going up and down because they have Kyle Shanahan. And when it comes to Shanahan, I think the biggest thing he could really improve is I think he could improve game management. I think that he is the best play caller in the league, and I think he is the smartest offensive mind and the most creative. But I think when it comes to improving your art as a coach, I think game management certainly should take some criticism at times. I'm not saying that was the Super Bowl, but just becoming better in all aspects. Something that he might be able to do this offseason. Now that he can look himself in the mirror and say, why did we not win the Super Bowl? I'm sure he'll go to the lab and find some new plays and find some new concepts to rattle the NFL with and to, absolutely shake the NFL to its core. And I expect an angry, motivated Kyle Shanahan, which is another reason they'll probably be better in 2024. But if he can go and learn some things about game management and study those aspects to become a better coach, I think that's what he needs to do. Looking at some personnel, offensively, I feel like the Niners are pretty well set. They pretty well have everyone coming back from Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk is a little bit in the air, but I think a lot of people are making a big story out of nothing. He's going to be signed to a 5th-year option, and I don't think that the team's going to trade him because they're in a Super Bowl window, and he's not going to go anywhere. Actually, when it comes to Brandon Ayuk, I think that he is going to become the focal point of the passing game. I think that Shanahan, a way to improve your attack is by making him heavily targeted, Brandon Ayuk, in the offense. More targeted than he was this year. I think making him the true number 1 option in a way that the Cowboys elevated CeeDee Lamb to that player this year, I think would do wonders for this offense and provide a go-to guy to this offense where it felt like they kind of had a bunch of different options that they could throw to. Make Ayuk the centerpiece in the passing game, and I think they might do that. I actually very well think they will. Deebo Samuel can then become more of a secondary playmaker to the passing attack and the running game, and you can use him in unique fashions. And George Kittle, as he gets a little bit older, can be more of a niche player, although he is still dynamic and one of the best tight ends, probably the most well-rounded tight end in football. I don't think McCaffrey is going to regress any. And this offensive line could really see some improvement this offseason. The left tackle is obviously great in Trent Williams. I think Aaron Banks at left guard is solid. I think the center is decent. But when you look at the right side of the offensive line, I think that the Niners could certainly use upgrades at potentially right guard, right tackle, and maybe even center. And they have the cap space. They have the draft picks. They have the ammunition to make these spots better. I very well could see the 49ers picking a tackle in the first round. I could see them upgrading the guard position in the mid-rounds or at least providing some competition, bringing back Feliciano, who actually got injured in the Super Bowl, and that was a critical injury people are overlooking in that landscape of this game in the fourth and overtime. He'll probably come back because he was very good for them at moments later in the year, but bringing in a younger player for right guard or maybe even another veteran through free agency might not be a bad idea. Center, the same thing can be applied, right? This was a 49er team that had weakness on the offensive line. They were 40.3% in 2023 pressure rate, which is 7th worst in the NFL. So they can get better. I don't think they're going to get any worse. They can get better on the offensive line. They can provide more time for Brock Purdy to go through his reads. They can be better at blitz pickup in 2024. And I don't see them getting worse, because I think the personnel will likely improve. And I think overall, when you're looking at the offense, the personnel will likely stay the same at the skill positions. Maybe Jawan Jennings departs as an RFA, but he is restricted, so I don't know. We'll see. Maybe he runs it back one more year with the 49ers. I would also like, just from a schematical perspective, I'd like Kyle to involve some of the other running backs more. I understand that in the playoffs and in the biggest games, McCaffrey's going to get a lot of the carries. But involving Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason, these are talented runners that I think deserve to get the ball a little bit more throughout the regular season, at least to keep McCaffrey fresh near the end of the year. And I'd expect that to also come in 2024. Now, Kyle Juszczyk is going to be back as well. I haven't mentioned him, but I didn't forget. And Kyle Juszczyk, one thing you can do is study the rule book, because I know that you're a player and not a coach, but you got to understand the rules, buddy. You did go to Harvard after all. You can read the rule book. Looking at the defensive side of the football, I think the 49ers have a chance, like I said already, to get better from a schematical perspective, and who they bring in as a defensive coordinator will have large influence on who they re-sign and who they go and sign in free agency. But I think there's some areas where they could improve, and I think there's areas where they could stay the same. I look at linebacker, and I feel like Fred Warner is still playing at his peak level. I think he is one of the best leaders and players in the NFL. And I think that Dre Greenlaw will be back at some point next year, although you have to wonder how healthy he'll be. And the goal with Greenlaw will be to get him back for the playoffs next year, I would think, because this is an Achilles injury. I'm not sure how long it's going to last. But bringing in a third linebacker, an improvement over Burks, an improvement over what they had this year would be a wise move. There's plenty of veterans out there to go and sign that could improve this spot. And even a guy like Al-Shaair, who was gone last year, was really good for the 49ers, left to Tennessee, became a number one linebacker for the Titans, had a breakout season this year. He is also a free agent once again, so maybe they bring him back, or maybe they look at the veteran market to bring in somebody reliable to replace Greenlaw for the early weeks in the season. And then just to have that reliable depth if one of those guys does go down. I think depth is crucial to this 49er defense, because I felt like it was the thinnest it's been in years, especially in the front seven, where they've been stacked in previous seasons. Chase Young is a free agent. He was a starting defensive end for the 49ers for a majority of the back half of the season, and the results were mixed. Fans were critical of him in the divisional round in the wild card. I think there could be improvement from Chase Young in the defense, especially with better defensive coordinator, and I feel like if you can get him back for a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, I think it's worthwhile. But if you have to sign him to a long-term contract and someone else outbids you, I'd let him walk. That being said, if you could get him back for a 1 year, combine him with bringing back Clelin Ferrell, who was out for the last, run of this playoff run. He was really solid in rotation as a run defender, especially. Bringing those two back, I think, would solidify your defensive line. Javon Kinlaw is probably going to go. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Randy Gregory. He's not really a big loss. Kinlaw would be a decent loss to the rotation of the defensive tackle position, but it's not like you can't find a third or fourth D tackle in free agency or later in the draft. That is not a huge deal to me. But solidifying that opposite defensive end position of Nick Bosa is a huge deal for this offseason. Is it Chase Young? Is it not? Obviously, Young would love to continue to play with Nick Bosa, and I'm sure that he'd like San Francisco. So I think he'll come back, but it's questionable, at least. I think if he would have had a huge playoff run and had a bunch of numbers, it would have been likely that he left, but that didn't really happen. So I think there's a case that he could be back this offseason. The safety position, I think, is going to improve because your best safety is going to return. Hufanga is going to return. He was an all-pro in 2022, and I think he's going to come back in 2023 and be really, really productive. Now, what I do think that the Niners need to improve is the speed of their secondary. I think they can do that by simply bringing back Hufanga into a starting role. Jair Brown replacing Tashawn Gibson as another starter on this defense would make them younger, faster, quicker to react, better pursuit in the run game. I think more versatility and coverage overall. And maybe they bring back Gibson as a veteran safety to be that third rotational player, but I wouldn't bring him back as a starter, personally. I'd look to get faster. I'd look to get more athletic, more versatile in the secondary. I think the same can be said about the nickel position. They tried Isaiah Oliver. That didn't work. I don't know what's going to happen there, but Logan Ryan was not the answer, right? And if you're not satisfied with Ambry Thomas, well, you need to go out and sign a corner. There's plenty of veterans out there that you could go and sign. If you want a perimeter guy, if you want an outside cornerback, you could go for some veterans like Stephon Gilmore. He's out there. He can still play at a pretty high level. Adoree Jackson is another reliable, really good veteran. Probably a 1-year deal. Pretty easy stuff. Kendall Fuller has some versatility inside or outside. And then you've got Kenny Moore. If you're strictly looking for a nickel corner, that would be a great signing for this defense. If you want to move Lenore to the nickel and just get an outside guy, well, you could go to the draft. But I would also look to add one of those veterans that is available, like a Gilmore, like an Adoree Jackson, and then combine that with maybe like a second or third round pick at the corner position. But Thomas also showed some potential, so I'd be willing to give him another chance as well in a depth role. Potentially start him off as your fourth corner and see how he performs. But I think there's certainly prospect for the Niners to improve on defense. Like, they could very well improve the depth of their defensive line and the linebacker position. They can improve their defensive scheme. They can get faster and more athletic in the secondary. They could get a more reliable number 2 perimeter corner. All these things are very, very, very possible. The Niners do not have a cap situation that is strict and really difficult. They have a majority of their core back. They have a ton of draft picks, especially considering the compensatory selections. The comp selections are not really out yet or available yet, but they're going to get a ton of them because of the coaches they've lost and the players they've lost. So I wouldn't worry about that. On top of it, you have a hungrier team. You have a desperate team. You have a team that is going to learn from this experience. You have a coach that's going to learn from this experience and only grow and get better. You have an organization that's going to go all in and press all the buttons they need to get that Super Bowl championship. This is a 49er team that I fully expect to be in the mix again next year. And everything might not fall the same way, but I actually expect the 49ers to be a more well-rounded team, to be better coached, better prepared. And I feel like Brock Purdy, to finish this all off, the quarterback, the guy pulling the strings on offense, is going to be a better quarterback. He was phenomenal this year, statistically speaking, but I think mentally he'll grow within the offense. His experience, from going against the Ravens, from going against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, from learning those experiences against Detroit and Green Bay, from coming back. All the games that he's strung together now, he is going to become a better player, a smarter player. He's going to have more of an offseason to work on his physical attributes. He was trying to repair his elbow last offseason. Now he's going to be able to work on his arm strength, his mobility, get stronger, get tougher in the pocket in terms of building some muscle on him, maybe going and refining his mechanics. So I feel like Brock Purdy is going to be better next year and at least more mature. Even if he doesn't get better physically, I think he'll get better mentally. And that's maybe the most underrated aspect of the quarterback position. So I see this team getting better. I see this team improving. I see this team potentially back in the Super Bowl in 2024, 2025. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for listening to this 49er rant. And I'll be back with another video soon. Gronk spike or Kittle spike the like button. And I'll see you in the next one. Deuces.